Okay, another question from the online audience. And I think there's quite a lot here, Ainsley, there's a lot of interested people in how do they get this happening in their local school. So one of the questions here is how do we as parents advocate for schools, social skills, PRT programs at our school? I think that's an advocacy issue, probably not one.
Advocacy, however,
Yeah.
I also think that it can be tied into the curriculum and students' IEP goals. I think that's the way as parents you can encourage this, and teachers you can also get this going. And when you think of kindergarten now and grade primary, the curriculum is actually quite a lot more play-based and encouraging kind of centers. And so along the time that I was proposing this model, I actually really went to the curriculum guide and went to the outcomes and how the province was seeing what was important in those grades. And so I do think that you can kind of use that.
Hi, this is for the data team. I had some questions and was wondering if you had some information with regards to when somebody takes their RBT training and they're paired with a child. As a mom, I know how critical pairing is and that right fit. So you had mentioned that sometimes it wasn't so right. If somebody gets the training, they have the good fit with their student, now are they going to be with that student in that school so long as that child is there? Or is this going to be like every year that student could potentially end up with like a new, my kids start kindergarten next year, so I'm just wondering, like, how is this going to look? What does this look like for the professional, for the student, for the relationship and the continuity and...
So about the sort of the bad fit. So I think that point that I was making was really that sometimes we feel that it's more training will lead to, and yes, that can be the case that sometimes someone hasn't had access or to the right kind of training or coaching and that type of thing, and that they'll do well, right? But I think when we say bad fit, I think sometimes when we were working with certain pairings, we would even say like it's just actually not a good fit, and it's actually more of a school-based administrator's decision in terms of like where EAs are assigned and so forth. So what we've actually found is that even though we may have a student designated EABT, a principal might actually see that the person who has the time and the will and the ability to take the training takes the position, but if it's not a good fit, that principal will take that action, and if there's another person in the school who we can have a better fit with and takes the training, then we'll sort of train that person instead. So I think that's what, instead of saying no, we'll keep having the training and but if we already know it's just not a good fit, we should maybe look at other options.
Okay, but on the flip side, when it's a really good fit, then is that student and that EA RBT, like, is their academic relationship, I guess, so to speak, is there anywhere in there that is allowed to continue on, or is that student going to be potentially met with like a new EA and having to repair every single year?
So all of our positions are posted in June. So if an EA sees an EABT position posts into that for the following September, they can keep that position because they own it, right? But if that position wasn't filled or something happened and it was a placement meeting maybe later on in the summer or even September, then they don't necessarily own that position. Right, so it's about working within our own local rules. But many of our EABTs who have been trained with their students and are doing well have been in those positions for a number of years, maybe from even year one, some of them. So there can be continuity in the sense that you're asking. Yeah.
Okay. Although I just want to make note that it is a union environment, and we can't necessarily guarantee that person will stay with the student.
If they want to leave, then we can't force them to stay. Yeah.
My question's for Dr. Boudreau. I come from a small community. I'm a parent of a child with autism. I'm a teacher, and I'm also a therapist after work. And I'm wondering what kind of specialized skill set you recommend for someone who wants to implement a program like yours in a school.
Well, I think you already have a lot of expertise there in what you just described. So I'll just put that one out there. And So, I mean, in the autism field, there's a whole range of expertise, and I actually think we all benefit from not being so siloed. I think that the parents are just as expert as the teacher, is just as expert as the psychologist, to be honest, and that it's a bit of a team approach. In terms of getting this kind of thing going, one book I'd actually recommend for you, particularly because you're a teacher, is The Classroom-Based Guide to PRT. It's a really lovely book designed specifically to do full class, so we're talking kind of tier 1 level skills across the whole classroom, so that not only the child with autism is getting it, but the other kids are. And there's some specific examples in that book about social skills, but then it also gives some ideas about how to incorporate some of the motivational academics that Dr. Cagle talked about. But then also just don't shy away from kind of starting your own playgroups and supporting. And I think that idea of knowing when to jump in and when to hold back, when to not overprompt and let kids do their thing is something to keep an eye on. Of course, any kind of behavioral training and coming to things like this is really helpful. But I mean, you bring a lot of skills to the table already.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also still on the peer-mediated pivotal response train. From a speech and language perspective as well, really great presentation, everyone across the board, and thinking about Lynn Cagle's talk about priming, so that's my preface. I'm curious about children over 6 in the province who get a different type of funding for services outside of school. And just reading through what your intervention involves, sort of 3 weeks, did you specify sort of what that 3-week program looked like? I maybe missed that, but
Yeah.
maybe part A, yeah.
Absolutely. So I tried to make it and pare it down as few sessions as possible, because busy school district, busy kid, I mean, these are 5-year-old kids, 6-year-old kids. So our sessions were only 20-minute long, and 8 consecutive days where I just worked directly with the classmates who didn't have autism. And then there was 8 sessions where the child with autism was paired with the classmate, the play coach, and I would sort of step in and out as needed and reminded the play coach of some of the skills. We also had the skills placed visually around the classroom so they could kind of see them, or we could direct them as needed.
Okay.
And so it was designed to be for the busy teacher, the busy classroom, busy
Yeah.
peers, and to keep everyone's attention.
Okay. So part B, almost done, thanks, is that I'm curious about what your thoughts would be on continuing with this type of intervention over the summer, knowing that the skill, that the research is not going to support the generalization of the skill in a school setting, which is where, I'm not sure who mentioned that the school is, our friend village. I love that. I wrote that down. But I think that what would you think like the pros and cons would be from a qualitative perspective to continue on that type of intervention over the summer, given the fact that there is an additional amount of funding that parents are seeking out to supplement what's going on in school?
I love the questions that you're asking. They're such thoughtful questions, both in terms of understanding the literature, but then also thinking about the practicality. And I think you kind of work with what you got. I think that practicing social skills, even in other environments, even though it may or may not translate exactly to schools, is still really important. So even if you could do some things on the playground, is a lovely place to start. So you're on the same playground that the child is going to be at school, and you're practicing, you bring some typically developing friends and their parents, and you're on the exact same swing set and the exact same toys, and so they can actually practice the skills, and that should generalize a bit better. So I think there is some things you can do. You can also think about priming and practicing with some games that tend to be popular amongst that age range, so that maybe there's some toys that are available in the schools at recess that maybe you kind of practice some of those skills beforehand. And so just trying to think outside the box. So, because I agree, I think, every parent has a bit of a different idea of what they want summers to look like, but there's still lots of social opportunities and ways to sort of bring that into play.
Thank you. Dr. Knight, my question is directed to you. In light of the soft skill development and the importance of creativity, I'm an art therapist, and I was looking at the coding and how you're developing the coding together. Is there ever a place where you introduce music as part of stimulation to work with neuroscience to help those children?
We haven't yet. But the robots themselves can be programmed to minimally speak and sing. So that might be one way to incorporate that.
Thank you.
But yeah, but we haven't approached that yet. That's a great idea.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think that was a fascinating afternoon, and I'd like to thank you all. I'm going to go over here. So first of all, a thanks to all our presenters and our facilitator. Thank you very much.